Bet you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give into the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Good morning, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am your host, Rich Barris, People's Pundit, Wednesday, September 8th. Got a lot to go over today, folks. Got a lot of polling to go over. We'll have Patrick Witt on. He's running for the 10th Congressional District. But before we get into the polling, I would be derelict if I didn't bring this up. Looks like Dr. Anthony Gain-of-Function Fauci is a big fat liar. 900 pages of documents obtained by the Intercept and Freedom of Information Act request appear to prove that Anthony Fauci is a liar. Whether his institute and other institutes associated with him used the Chinese to skirt a 2014 law that basically bans gain-of-function research in the United States. But I guess if you have friends in China and you still want to play mad scientist, you could always use them. Now, I'm going to play a clip, and we will get into the polling, but I've got to go over this. I'm going to play a clip. Bear with me. It's 2 minutes long, a little less than 2 minutes long. This is going back at C-SPAN to the original exchange with Rand Paul and Dr. Senator, who is also a doctor, Rand Paul, and Dr. Anthony Fauci, the head of the National Institute of Health, and the coronavirus czar for all intents and purposes, over 2 presidents. This is before we did know. And I want you to listen to the word games that he is playing and how that has evolved all the way up into his little media appearance last night, where he clearly looked like a scared little boy. All right, let's play this.
If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2, that's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Wait a minute.
It did come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
This
committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It
no
is
one is
Nice bait and
those
switch right
viruses
there.
caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and
Off
NIH
topic.
funded it.
That
You
is
can't
not-
get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator,
You are the
obfuscating
one.
is the word.
Expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by quality.
He goes in to repeat himself over and over again. We actually now know more than that, which is probably not telling Anthony Fauci isn't even telling the truth on that, I think, is what we're going to find out. Because Adam Housley, by the way, tweeted yesterday when this came out. And I want everyone to know what he's saying. He said, I told you all this before, and it's actually worse than he ever even tried to cover it up for, and you're going to find that out. Anybody who would listen was told by the Trump State Department when this pandemic started that this is what we were going to find. I just want you to understand how long a lot of people knew about this and just needed the black and white documents to back it up. When Rand Paul asked him about that under oath, he knew he was lying. He already knew. This is something Dr. Fauci doesn't seem to understand. He already knew. And in truth, whether it turns out to be true or not that what he specifically funded caused the pandemic is totally irrelevant to the law from 2014. It's completely irrelevant, which it may not, again, even be true. It's totally irrelevant to what the senator was saying and alleging in that clip. And that was the original back and forth that got a lot of hay. And I want, bear with me here on this next clip, because here's Rand Paul in his opening statement later in a follow-up hearing, taking it back to the central point.
Dr. Fauci, we don't know whether the pandemic started in a lab in Wuhan or evolved naturally, but we should want to know. 3 million people have died from this pandemic, and that should cause us to explore all possibilities.
And actually, wires crossed on dates.
Instead, government authorities, self-interested in continuing gain-of-function research, say there's nothing to see here. Gain-of-function research, as you know, is juicing up naturally occurring animal viruses to infect humans. To arrive at the truth, the U.S. government should admit that the Wuhan Virology Institute was experimenting to enhance the coronavirus's ability to infect humans. Juicing up superviruses is not new. Scientists in the U.S. have long known how to mutate animal viruses to infect humans. For years, Dr. Ralph Barrick, a virologist in the U.S., has been collaborating with Dr. Shi Zhengli of the Wuhan Virology Institute, sharing his discoveries about how to create superviruses. This gain-of-function research has been funded by the NIH. The collaboration between the U.S. and the Wuhan Virology Institute continues. Doctors Barrick and Shi worked together to insert bat virus spike protein into the backbone of the deadly SARS virus, and then use this man-made supervirus to infect human airway cells. Think about that for a moment. The SARS virus had a 15% mortality. We're fighting a pandemic that has about a 1% mortality. Can you imagine if a SARS virus that's been juiced up and had viral proteins added to it, to the spike protein, if that were released accidentally? Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan.
End of story. End of story. And I'm not doing that to be, deceptively editing the video. That's it. End of story. 900 pages later, that is not true. And I want you to understand something for a second. When Donald Trump was president, the media absolutely hated when he would call them the enemy of the American people. The entire political class in this country, backed by corporate media, told you to heap praise on this man, told you we should all lionize him, might as well get a statue for Dr. Fauci soon, and told you to listen to all the recommendations of a man who very possibly could have caused the whole damn thing. What kind of a sick person does Dr. Fauci have to be to know what he did and yet still play that role? Just imagine that for a second. What kind of a sick, narcissistic sociopath do you have to be to go on every single Sunday show you can get booked on, to take every primetime slot you can get booked for, when you know damn well that this probably is going to be exposed? Or maybe you didn't. Maybe the hubris is so much in the God syndrome world that he lives in. Maybe it's so much that he really just didn't think it would come out. I'll tell you what, folks, last night, I know a lot of people are like, yeah, well, he lied under oath. Rand Paul referred him to the DOJ and nothing will happen. Maybe that's the case. But I'll tell you what, he looked scared last night. He looked scared. That was a scared man. The nerve of Twitter and the rest of them to take the clip, he said, totally pivoting away from the question of what was exposed in these documents. Completely pivoting away from that. And they ran with it, but nevertheless, you go back and look at that, he looked scared. That is a scared little man. And he's a little man. And I can say that because I'm not exactly tall myself, for those who have known. So don't feel bad, Viva. You're not alone. All right. With that in mind, I got to bring that up. Because this man now for almost 2 years has been the authority on COVID-19 when he could end up being the man who helped create COVID-19. And I want you to marinate on that. Marinate on it. Speaking of which, we're going to look at some numbers. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be a little risky. I'm not going to make any claims. I'm just going to show you results. But I do think I've debated whether or not I should even do this on, certain venues. But I think it's so important it has to be done. And you all know where to find me in the event something happens. All right. The Labor Day 2021. Maddow was right last night when she said that this is it. This is the period where everybody starts to pay attention. That is true. And with Afghanistan, I can tell you there are a lot of people paying attention. And overall, Joe Biden's approval rating continues to fall. And his disapproval rating continues to rise. Here is the trend for our polling since we started the public polling project, to include the one that was, there is a private, that very beginning poll is a private poll that we threw in there, and some of you have seen it anyway. But this is the trend since Joe Biden was inaugurated that we have. And I think it was important to put that in there because it shows the theme of this whole presidency. I have said this now ad nauseum. And all of these so-called gurus are just now starting to catch on. Joe Biden never had a base of support. When he was elected, he was a 48%er. At best. He has no base of people like Obama, like Trump, even hell, like George W. Bush, who at one time or another loved him to death and would do anything, jump in a volcano if they have to. Not Joe Biden. This is the quickest collapse of a presidency any of us have ever seen in a modern, in any age really, but in the modern age of public opinion research. Gerald Ford wasn't a real presidency. We can't even use that as an example. An elected president. None has collapsed like this. Overall approve is still 44%. Disapprove is 53%. We're at -9 now. But I am telling you, locals, community, go in those crosstabs. Eventually, Democrats, we already see, you can already see the easing from truly liberal people, you can already see some of look, there was a group of people, he needed the liberal base, but he also needed those, he needed some Metro Republicans, and he needed the third-party voters who didn't vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016 to vote for him. I will add with a caveat. If you look at the 2020 vote history in this poll, you'll see that Biden is slightly overstated by about a point. You'll see that Trump is slightly understated by about 2.5 points. Look, some people lie, so I'm going to, leave you with just that caveat. Could it be we understate certain people? It's possible. It could also be that some people are lying. They voted for Trump and they won't say it. And that's why there's a disparity in that. So let me address that right now before I hear it, because I know I'm going to hear it. Rightfully so. But I ultimately don't think it would be that much of an impact. Everything that's significant and we have to talk about, you're going to see in a minute. This is a miserable trend. And it is not even, the guy hasn't even been in office a year. I was on with War Room with Steve Bannon earlier talking about the history of this. The Hill comparing him to Bill Clinton, or Politico comparing him to Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter. Folks, Bill Clinton was not elected with a majority of the popular vote. Bill Clinton was elected with Ross Perot taking a huge chunk out of George Herbert Walker Bush's base. Bush got 38%. Bill Clinton sailed in an electoral college win with 43% of the vote. That's it. So I'm not sure these two examples are particularly comparable. No matter what with Barack Obama, he is worse off than Obama in the summer that of 2009 when you had all of the Tea Party explosions and protests and explosions, meaning political explosions, guys, eruptions, town halls. You remember the town halls? Maybe some of you don't. But it was actually started not as a response to Obamacare, but as a response to TARP. Runaway spending. But Obama had a base to protect him. Obama had people who loved him. By the way, Joe Biden got more votes than Barack Obama. I'm just throwing that in there. All right, let's look inside here. That's why it's called Inside the Numbers. Independents and third-party voters combined. Joe Biden's approval sits at about 35%. That's it. When you look at the third-party voters alone, he's in the 20s. When I saw Emerson's poll, what was it, a week or two ago, I was thinking to myself, look at that someone else number. I wonder what we're going to find. And I'm going to show you, we're going to do the head-to-head with Trump and Biden shortly, looking at just the 2020 electorate. Because worse for Biden is that, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but new voters wouldn't save Joe Biden. Some surge, and by the way, we were very generous. 15% new voters. Very generous. They really should be more like 10%. Historically accurate. In line. Sometimes there are never voters, folks. New voters. Sometimes we lose voters from one presidential race to another. 08 to 12. 96, 2000. It's not always the case we see voters increase from one electorate to another. And population gains just didn't jive. It's just something just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit. The first president to ever defeat an incumbent president who increased his vote share. 10 million votes? Hillary Clinton had 4 decades of relationships with the black community. He outperformed her. Barack Obama, the actual first black president, because by the way, they called Hillary Clinton's husband the first black president. He did better than all of them, yet he's collapsing at a faster rate? Something just doesn't smell good, man. And this is the thing that kicks me with this Politico article, which, give me a second. The guy can't catch a break, says Les Francis, a Democratic strategist and former deputy White House chief of staff in the Carter administration. Les, what the hell are you talking about? That's all he caught. He was handed a vaccination. He was handed a rollout of the vaccination. He was handed a pandemic response. He was handed an economy that was back-to-back million jobs every month created under Trump post-shutdown. He was handed 3% or greater wage growth that exceeded the rate of inflation. Inflation is now 57% higher. So it's no wonder we're seeing numbers like this. Let's bring up his... Let's first look at his on the issues. And I'm actually going to go back and bear with me for a second because I want to show you what they were, what they are now, and what they were. Okay? That's his overall approval rating. Give me a second. Let me go to my own history here. Okay? All right. That's the new one we just created for Labor Day. Where are the issues for... There he is. All right? We did see some issues. His disapproval, come down just slightly, but his overall approval rating falling more. And there just being, in some of these cases, just a greater number of people who are saying undecided. But it's statistically insignificant. And the only one that really is significant outside of his overall is that coronavirus issue. How do you more specifically, do you approve or disapprove of the job Joe Biden is doing on each of the following issues? And the key one being coronavirus pandemic. Because that is the only issue he has ever received high marks on, despite the media gaslighting. He was positive on the economy 1 month, and it wasn't even a strong positive. It's like +2. This has been 7-8 months of gaslighting. More than that, actually. You've been gaslit for the better part of 2 years. 50.9%, all right, in this new poll, approve of the job Joe Biden is doing on the coronavirus pandemic, down from 52.3% last month. Now, 45.2% disapprove, up from 44.4%. And the number who are undecided is 3.8, very similar to the 3.3 we found. Here's the thing. The number of undecided is so low, and actually ticked up this month, that the only way that can happen, and the only way we can see what was his high in our poll with coronavirus, was like 60% approval. That is only possible if people change their minds. They once upon a time said, I think he's doing a good job, and now say he sucks on this issue like he sucks on all the other issues. The economy, jobs in the economy, 45.8% approve, 49.2% disapprove, 5% undecided. Okay, and by the way, that's down 0.1 of a percentage point. Not that big of a deal. Immigration and border security, well, it is a big deal that he's negative, but I mean, it wasn't that big of a change. Immigration, 37.4% approve, 54.7% disapprove. Approve, by the way, is down from a point. Crime, 39.3% approve, 50.6% disapprove. Crime last month his approval was 39.3% on the dot, so he didn't budge at all. U.S.-China relations, 34.3% approve, down from 36.2%. Now disapprove is 50.3%, slightly down from 51.5% last month. Foreign policy, down from 38.1% last month to 34.4% this month. Last month, only 51.8% said they disapproved of the job Joe Biden was doing on foreign policy. This month, it is 50.3%. So you see all these slight little tick downs along with his approval. Afghanistan. Or actually, I'm sorry, that approval was for Afghanistan. 34.4% is Afghanistan. 37.7% is overall foreign policy. Afghanistan disapproval, 58.4%. Okay? Look, let's just get right into it. Get into the vote preference because I got a guest coming up and I don't want to keep him waiting. We can come back and talk about these in a little bit. This is just the 2020 electorate. And I will tell you overall as well. But here is the head-to-head matchup between Donald Trump, an essential hypothetical rematch if it was 2024. And let me pull it up on my end so I can see it better. If you just look, first of all, Donald Trump leads Joe Biden by 4 points. 43-39, 11% choosing third party or somebody else, and 6% undecided. I said this to you locals people, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. Get it early. This reminds me of 16. If you remember, if you've been following the public polling project, and even before that, when we were polling for the Epoch Times, there was not a big someone else vote. The number of undecideds was lower than they were in 16. It's not because it's early. Donald Trump evoked very strong feelings, and there weren't too many people who were undecided. And they weren't saying, I don't really like either one. I'm going to, toss to a third party. This is 2 points. Trump's support in this poll is just a little point and a half less than what we found for his vote share in 2020, which was already low on what his actual result was. This is a complete catastrophe for Joe Biden and Democrats in general. Trump runs about 3 points ahead of the Republicans on the generic ballot. He holds a 4-point lead over Joe Biden right now nationally. Republicans hold a slight 1-point lead on the generic ballot, which, by the way, does absolutely seem to point to an early, and I'd love to get, I'm going to save that talk, though, for Patrick Witt. But it does point to an early route. It's Labor Day now. We didn't even look at likely voters as opposed to registered voters. Is not a good sign for the Democratic majority in the House. And when we ask about party control, you can see those numbers inflate several points less on undecided. And that is indicative of what people tell us they're going to do when they go to vote. If you say you're undecided, but you tell us the Republican Party is who you want to control Congress, who the hell are they going to vote for when they finally get in the booth? In the election forecast model we ran at PPD, that was very predictive. Extremely predictive. All right, and undecided, again, 6.4%. That's the overall electorate. But what you're looking at is just the 2020 electorate on the screen, which is 44 for Donald Trump and 40.5 for Joe Biden. Donald Trump actually does a little bit better among voters who didn't vote in 2020, which give him a little bit of a boost. So while we heard about the new voter before November, which was going to help Joe Biden so much, I wonder how they plan on pulling off what they tried to pull off. Well, they didn't try. What they did pull off last November, because they don't have the new voters to do that. They need these people not to vote. It would be a closer election if there weren't new voters. Either way, this is why Joe Biden not only would be defeated, he would be defeated soundly. This is a landslide, folks. And with third-party votes, this is a landslide that includes Nevada, Minnesota, New Hampshire. Damn right. Wipe away 8 to 10 points, no problem, when you have 11% going to third-party voters. No problem. Less than 5% are undecided in the 2020 electorate. They're locked in. And it's almost impossible for Joe Biden to make up lost ground, because if you voted for Donald Trump, less than 2% of those voters say they would vote for Joe Biden. If you voted for Joe Biden, 6% of those voters say they would vote for Donald Trump, and 13% would vote for somebody else. Joe Biden is having a hard time holding on to 25% of the people who voted for him in the last election. That's an I guess he can't hear me yet, folks. Give him a hot minute. Let me bring him in. But I can hear you, Patrick. You can't hear me, okay? Yeah, no, it's poor Laura. And for those of you who were wondering, which I already got the text about, she's sick, and I don't think she's sick about something. Don't go getting all COVID crazy on me, folks. All right, she is sick though, and she needs some time to rest a little bit. I'm not gonna bust her chops and make her come and do things when she needs to rest. Had a pretty bad fever yesterday, and she's young, she's healthy, she's got a good immune system, and she'll power through it. But before we try to bring her in, we're gonna let her rest. Hey, Patrick, you there, buddy? Can you hear me? All right, man. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me bring you on, Patrick. All right. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Witt. He's running for the 10th Congressional District in Georgia. We've had other candidates on as well. I don't know now, a year, Patrick, I guess, since we first spoke. So I'm really glad to have you on, and I'm glad you get to, coming from the audience, and thanks for joining Inside the Numbers.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to join your show. Obviously, big fan of yours and your work on election integrity. So glad to be with you this morning.
And incredible. I mean, you had that fight in Georgia. I think, and I did want to ask you specifically, I saw some tweets of yours too about mandates. I'd like to get into all of that during this interview. But you had the fight in Georgia. I'm going to ask you right off the jump, where do you think that bill fell in on the spectrum? Because I really would have liked to see more done, Patrick, with that bill. Jim Crow 2.0. I mean, come on, man. I mean, they expanded things that are likely to cause issues, and they did not take some of the more pressing proposals, I guess, or, proposals that would have dealt with the more pressing issues. But overall, what was your take? I mean, overall a win? What do you think for election integrity?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is it was a baby step in the right direction, but we needed a giant leap. It definitely dealt with, a lot of focus was on signature matching. We did a lot of analysis on that, but there was much more on the procedural side, on data security, data hygiene side. Part of my analysis, my work on the president's legal team, was looking at just the voter data from the state's own, databases. And there was so much garbage on there. You could tell. I mean, people born in 1902, that are apparently still voting in these elections, people born in the 1800s. And you might roll your eyes and say that's somebody fat fingered or, entered something wrong. It's an honest mistake. But when I talked with people in the Secretary of State's office and I said, who has access to change all of this data? They said, pretty much any county clerk can. Yeah. And that immediately raised red flags to me. So if you're trying to run a tight election and make sure that people can have confidence in it, you absolutely have to tighten down the screws on all of these different elements of it. And that goes from the application to the actual drop off of the ballot and the counting of it. So chain of custody was not really addressed in this.
Yeah.
And, the one thing I would say on this is, no matter how many bills you pass, how many laws you pass, it does come down to actually having the strength of resolve to implement them. And we had a very weak Secretary of State who just didn't do his job. So, it's two parts. It's one, you got to get the laws right and make sure you tighten down all the procedural and custody issues. And then you also need to elect a person to that office who will actually implement those laws, even when they're going to get called all sorts of names, because that's coming.
Yeah, it really is all about courage, is it not, Patrick? I mean, when it comes down to it, I'm recalling our conversations, after the election. It really just came down to courage. Isn't it true, because I get this crap from the media all the time, isn't it true that just about everybody was in agreement generally about what happened? The real difference was who was willing to stand up and fight against it. I mean, was there anyone seriously behind the scenes? Who believed in the MSNBC spiel? Go ahead, sorry.
That's okay. There were plenty of people here in the Georgia establishment that I saw that just wanted to move on, thought that there was no issues here, took the Brad Raffensperger line and believed him and just wanted to move on to the Senate runoffs and how they could raise the most money for that. That's ultimately what led me to jump into this race to get involved. Is I was so disgusted, disappointed, choose your acronym, it's probably not strong enough, by what I saw out of our Georgia statewide elected leaders and really the entire Georgia establishment class, both in the House and the Senate. These people had no courage, exactly as you said, to stand up and fight this because they were concerned about being called a conspiracy theorist. And on the one hand, I'm a data guy, I'm a fact based guy, I get that, but they didn't take the time to actually dig into what we were alleging. All of the evidence that we brought forward in our lawsuit. And so you can't sit over there and claim that there was nothing at issue with that election if you didn't actually take the time to get into it. I lived it for several months. I know the issues that existed in that election, and there should have been, at the very least, a very serious investigation by Brian Kemp, by the GBI, by Brad Raffensperger. They let us down. They let the whole state down. They let the state go blue, not only in the presidential election, but also lost those 2 Senate seats. People stayed home because they were tired of seeing their elected leaders sit on their hands and pass the buck and do nothing.
Both myself and Patrick Cahaley also polled the state to ask during the January 5th runoff what people in the state of Georgia thought. And a majority in the Peach State believed that Donald Trump won that election. And that there were, and to silence their voices is just some kind of conspiracy theorist, which is why sometimes I get a little bit hard on some of the people who distract away. If you lived it like you did, I know you did, and you should tell people, by the way, while I have you, you should tell people what you did, your role, because there were people willing to look at the wealth of, it's not just the wealth of data. It's not just evidence. You're trying to see what went right, what went wrong. When you look into something like this, you're not looking for just, anomalies. You're looking to see how well the process is working. And I think a lot of people distracted from legitimate efforts to conduct some kind of oversight or even to improve our electoral system. So I get a little bit hard on them at sometimes, but, basically you should tell people, what you did. And, you said it, I was going to give you the opportunity to do it, but you already said it. That's what led you to jump into it. It's not just this issue. It's just that it was an issue that really did define where people stood. What were you willing to do to defend your voters? What were you willing to do to defend the law, the rule of law? And, some people stood on one side, some people stood on another. I'll let you expand on it because I'm sure people would like to hear it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So I was serving in the Trump administration. I was deputy chief of staff of the Office of Personnel Management. And after November 3rd, I took a leave of absence, unpaid, came down and just wanted to volunteer, wanted to help. Obviously, my state was ground zero in all the worst ways for everything that went wrong in that election. And I came down and was just disgusted by what I saw of our statewide elected leaders, various people, members of the Georgia establishment class stand around, wanted to just, put out a press release. Oh, yeah, we called for Brad Raffensperger to resign. We've done our part. Let's go back to raising money for the Senate runoffs. Yeah. And there was another gentleman from my agency in the Trump administration down with me. And we told him, look, there is no Senate victory unless you look into these claims. These are serious and they need to be investigated or people are not going to show back up. And that's exactly what we saw happen. 300 to 400,000 people, I believe, just stayed home. Otherwise, we'd have 2 more Republican senators. And I place that squarely at the feet of our statewide elected leaders because of their failure to step up in the moment when it actually mattered. They'll talk tough. They'll, issue statements about election integrity. But when it mattered, they were nowhere to be found or they actively worked against us. And that's Brad Raffensperger, who's a favorite punching bag of, the right nowadays. But that's also our attorney general, our lieutenant governor, and our governor. They ultimately are entrusted with the powers when they get elected to those offices for moments such as those, and they did nothing with those. I came down as a volunteer, as I mentioned. I was initially just, raised my hand and I said, use me however you want. My background in the private sector, I'd done a lot of advanced analytics projects, working in business consulting. And so here was a team of R&C guys that were paid staffers, and they were doing nothing with respect to the recount. So me and several others, Cleta Mitchell, and some of the other lawyers down here basically split off and officially became the president's legal team. He had people here in the state that were on the payroll that were doing nothing. I was buying pizzas for other people. So all that hundreds of millions of dollars that they raised on election integrity efforts, we didn't see any of it, at least here in Georgia. And I can attest to that because I was in the room. I ran direct data analysis for those efforts, which ultimately underpinned the president's lawsuit here in Georgia. And through judicial gimmicks and liberal judges, they sat on our lawsuit. I think we filed in the first week of December and did not even get a judge appointed until the first week of January. They gave us a trial date for January 8th, obviously 2 days after they were scheduled to count the ballots there in Congress. And I personally briefed members of Congress on the Senate and House side, the Vice President's Chief of Staff, Mark Short, in person on what was in our lawsuit, the very serious claims that we had alleged and that my data efforts backed up. And we tried to get them to delay, if for no other reason than to give President Trump his day in court. Obviously, January 6th happened. A lot of that support just evaporated and we had to withdraw our lawsuit. So President Trump never got his day in court down here in Georgia. And the claims that all of the evidence has been debunked, it was judicial gimmicks that kept any of these cases from actually on the merits.
That's right. And twists of what people say and twists of definitions like PolitiFact when it came to Fulton County. The statement I made, and I know this happened to other people too, was just specifically talking about how many change of address flags were on the voter file in Fulton County. I wasn't saying that those ballots were counted or not. The point is, we needed those election day records, right? So we needed records that they were playing games with. And Georgia's not the only state who did it. But the idea like all of this was vetted, Patrick, is not. It's just it's a total lie. It's nonsense. But it does show you, and I can attest to what Patrick said, folks. I'm telling you, there were a few people who understood what you've heard Robert Barnes and I say for many, many times over. There was no January 5th victory possible for Republican candidates unless they had addressed these issues. And my audience knows that is exactly what happened. 300,000, 400,000 voters just said, you know what? Not this time. I'm not doing it. They were either discouraged or they figured, I'm not going to hold my nose anymore. I'm not going to do it. When they won't defend me, I'm not going to defend them. And we heard it over and over, and we watched it happen. And it was inevitable once they decided to take that route. But because, it really does go back to that courage. I saw your Twitter feed and the vaccination mandates. We know they're coming. Thursday, Joe Biden is going to walk out, folks. He's going to try to order employers like me to force my employees to get vaccinated. He's going to try to order, who knows what the breadth of this will be. But you have some people who are trying at the state level to basically prevent that. You're one of them, Patrick. I saw you signed on with that. Tell us what you're trying to do and what Governor Kemp's response has been so far.
Yeah, so I wrote a letter just recently calling on Governor Kemp to convene a special session to protect both people working in the public sector and then also the private sector. He has taken some steps to issue executive orders to protect those from vaccine mandates working in the public sector. But that's obviously a very small percentage of Georgians here. So there are millions of people here in the state who are still unvaccinated. For whatever reason, I don't care, but that's their choice. And I believe that they have a right to not inject something into their body that is ultimately an experimental vaccine still at this stage for a virus that has an incredibly high survival rate. And for a vaccine whose effectiveness continues to decline by the day, and they keep on pushing booster shots on you. And so I believe it is absolutely imperative that Republican states that, like Georgia, have both chambers of their general assemblies controlled by Republicans and a Republican governor. There is no reason why they should not take steps to protect people. And often you hear in the conservative circles, well, we can't infringe upon private property rights. We don't want to tell businesses what to do. Well, I'm sorry, BS. We tell businesses what to do all the time. They can't discriminate based on race, based on national origin, based on religion, based on gender, based on genetic information, disability, you name it. We can impose reasonable limitations on the private sector to operate their businesses. We as conservatives accept those. I don't think anyone's out there, saying that segregation should be brought back or anything. And I know that's an extreme example, but We need to protect people who don't want to take this vaccine. You can disagree with them. You might think their position is absolutely crazy, but the second we allow our government to start dictating what gets injected into our bodies, there is no limit to what the government can tell you what to do. And I think in a conflict of rights, if you want to frame it that way, absolutely the individual rights not to take this vaccine should triumph over the government's prerogative to try and get you to take it.
Yeah, I called those. I mean, and I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to have a discussion about this because it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. So 2020 definitely led to. It's going to be this internal fight for control of the party between those candidates or those Republicans who I call them principled losers. I mean, you don't have to be as direct as I am, but I call them principled losers. They've been principled and losing for decades. And the idea that you can't use government power to prevent government from abusing its power is completely crazy. It just doesn't make any sense. But you have those people who make those cases, like Kristi Noem, for instance. I think she heard her future prospects for some of the positions she's taken. So I guess you halfway answered where I'm going with this. But there's a slew of you guys out there that I really don't think would have run if we didn't see what happened in 2020, and then also this splinter between. You think that's a fair assessment that there are really two types of Republicans right now vying for control of this party? One is identifying that it's literally a way of life they're trying to stamp out, and you have to act. You have to be willing at least to use some degree of power, like the opposition does, in order to preserve that way of life. And then there are others, again, I label them principled losers. Do you think that's a fair assessment? And then obviously, where do you stand on that? Why? Where would you stand and why?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think there is that divide still within the Republican Party. And a lot of people want to come together and sing kumbaya and say, Democrats are the enemy. Let's just, shake hands, call a truce, and focus on the other side. Now, I get that, but I do believe that this, battle, this discussion, debate, whatever you want to call it, on our side needs to play out because I'll use a football analogy. I'm a football guy in my background. If I was not confident in my teammates' ability to get on the field and do their job, I would never step on the field against that other team. I would fix the people on my roster first and make sure that I have the team to go out there and compete. Because the Democrats on the other side, they are very effective. They have a good squad over there, and they know how to exercise power. They know how to wield it. And our side doesn't. We have half of our team that just wants to, immediately jump to the compromise. And if you think about tug of war, if your side isn't even pulling in the opposite direction, that compromise is going to end up 50 yards in the other direction. Because I guarantee Democrats are pulling 100 miles an hour on that other side. My view on this, I am sensitive to the fact, I am a conservative. I'm a small government guy, low tax, the whole Ronald Reagan conservatism. I get that, but you also need to know what time it is. And right now we are in an absolute battle for the future of this country. And unless you elect people who are willing to fight back in ways that, an ideology might not allow them to, you are guaranteeing failure in this country. We know exactly what the outcome is if we continue down the principled loser path. I get that. And I'm with you 100%. So in my view, I think you have to do three things and prioritize these above all else. You have to secure elections. Without that, there is no two-party system. We will never win another election again. Everything else, every policy debate doesn't matter. Second, you absolutely have to end the illegal immigration crisis and because they will continue to be used as political pawns by the left. They'll be resettled in swing states. They know, they'll control the information. They'll get to these people. They'll turn them out to vote. And again, you will never win another election in this country again. And then third, we have to fight back against the indoctrination and the censorship that is happening because we're not losing people in their 30s, 40s, 50s. By the time they get to that age, their opinions, their views of the world are pretty baked. You have to go after people in schools and universities where they're being radicalized and where they're being, called by the siren song of socialism, communism, you name it. So I think those three things. And, on the third one, I think that's taking action against big tech. I think that is, school choice or whatever the appropriate method is to allow parents to reclaim their children's minds. And all three of those need to be prioritized in order to even get to the kind of second order questions about tax rates and regulation, you name it, because without those first three, none of the rest matters.
Yeah, you're talking about the mid to long term viability of not only a party but an ideology, a way of life, whatever worldview. If you don't address those issues, and you really hit, we talk about it on the show all the time: immigration, migration, education. People always ask me, they're looking at the competitive race in Virginia. Well, Virginia used to be red. How did it turn into a blue state, Rich? And it's the same thing over and over again. You really just echoed everything we talk about, because it doesn't happen overnight, but it's been ignored for so long that it's paying dividends right now for them. It's that simple. And Republicans are always focused on the superficial, and what always, it really never ceases to amaze me. We pull all these issues. I have never seen Democrats give in or give up on issues when the American people stand with them. They constantly press forward even when the American people don't stand with them on these issues. And 30 years since, for instance, the issue of abortion we just polled. Pro-life and pro-choice as a designation, separated by a few points. But when you talk about specifics, like we asked about the heartbeat bill in Texas, we asked about the feeling pain bill. When you lay out the specifics, it's not even close. And Republicans I guess they're just afraid of the media. They're afraid of, and you have dealt with this firsthand, so you know what it's like. They're afraid of that deluge of criticism that comes down when Republicans try to take a stand. And without that, you said the internal fight has to begin. That can't improve until this internal fight is hatched out. Would you agree with that? That will never improve.
I do agree with that. I think you're exactly right. These issues, especially where we have the high ground, you mentioned abortion. I was so grateful to see that the Supreme Court, no thanks to John Roberts, allowed that bill to stand.
Right.
And then immediately on the left, you see their heads explode. They don't know how to respond to this. They start making arguments about abstinence and, maybe we shouldn't be, having sex. Like, oh, you're kind of, you're arriving at the point that we might suggest you should arrive at. When you fight back, the Democrats are not used to it. They are very used to a Republican Party that just wants to roll over and effectively act as controlled opposition. I think it's critically important, as you're talking about with some of these issues that are popular. Immigration, I think, would be another one where Republicans are on the right side of that issue. The majority of people do not want to see our southern border continue to be flooded by illegal immigrants. Yeah. And you need people to get elected who understand this is not just about 2022. This is not just about 2024 even. This is about decades into the future, the survival of the party and the conservative ideology at all. So you need people that understand that long game, that we're not going to take back this country overnight, and that you need to prioritize your policies in such a way that allow us to continue to win elections, and then also elect people that are going to take action on the other issues where we do have the upper hand.
Yeah, let me ask you about a couple of those that are going through right now. I don't know if Joe Manchin's going to be able to hold the line forever in Congress all by himself, but CPI just came out again. 57% increase, and we want to spend another almost $4 trillion. I just don't understand what Republicans are doing out there. What could they do? What could they do better? We just were talking about it before you came on. This would be a dead presidency if it was a Republican president already. A collapse this profound over such a short period of time. The only issue he's positive on now is coronavirus. Republicans should be acting as if they have the wind at their back, that they have the American people on their side, but they're not. So what do you, I will ask you. Do you think the party's being led correctly? If you got elected, would you support Kevin McCarthy? Because that's who's in line, Patrick. Let's be real about that.
Yeah, I understand. So first of all, knowing that I would be a freshman congressman, that there would be a learning curve, I would seek out the opinions of those people like a Jim Jordan that I do respect. If it was just me, sitting at home right now, I would not be voting for Kevin McCarthy. I think we need bold leadership at the top, and I haven't seen that from him. I really don't know. I sent out a tweet a while back. I'm confident that we will take back the House in 2022, but the current leadership of the Republican Party on the House side, I don't know what they stand for. I have no idea what their policy priorities are, and maybe they're just trying to hide it to not present a target to the other side. But when Democrats got in office, they're in power. And they understand exactly what they're going to do. Joe Biden signs off a flurry of executive orders the day he steps in. Nancy Pelosi takes back the gavel. They got HR 1 already on the floor. These people understand exactly what their agenda is. On our side, I don't know if we do. And on top of that, you need someone who can corral the leadership and really set a vision for this country. And I just don't see it out of Kevin McCarthy right now.
And they oppose quicker too. President Trump signs a vetting order to vet refugees, and the ACLU's in court tomorrow. Whoever it may be, with a whole bunch of district attorneys or whatever it may be that sign on, attorney generals that sign on in Democratic blue states. They even have opposition down better. But I think that you nailed it. I think that's because they don't have an identity crisis going on at this moment. There are different factions in the Democratic Party, but the difference is they all still stand for, they have so much in common, and when they get there, they move toward those goals. That's not true of the Republican Party. There are people, they all claim to believe in the same thing, but they don't pursue the same basic goals, and I think that's really, that's why it's not inconsistency. It's more like incoherence. If you don't have an identity, you can't have a message, right? I mean, it's bottom line.
Right. Yeah, I mean, on the other side, you have the squad that has completely taken over that Democrat Party. There is no moderate Democrat Party anymore. Blue dogs, I don't think any of them exist. Maybe they do, but they're keeping their heads down, and it's really incumbent upon them to purge that side of their party because they do have a bunch of radicals. I think we need a counterbalance on our side. You do see that in some of the Marjorie Taylor Greens out there that are willing to go toe-to-toe with these people. I am encouraged by what I see from some of the other candidates in different races, guys like Joe Kent out in Washington. There is a movement of younger people who are fed up, who have had enough, who want to take back over our own Republican Party and send things back in the right direction. I'm a part of that movement. And we will ultimately form up our own coalition, gather members, from House Freedom Caucus and others that really understand this is an existential fight. We are in a fight for our lives in this country, and we have to start acting like that. This is not a policy debate anymore. It's not a party on the other side that is negotiating in good faith. And if you think for a moment that any inaction on your part or restraint will somehow be reciprocated, or that it's inspiring goodwill on the other side, I think you're a fool, you're naive, and you're just ignorant of the facts. Democrats will continue to push the envelope wherever they possibly can. And for far too long, Republicans have shown that they will not fight back. So they can just keep pushing. But I do think there are a number of people out there that I'm encouraged by who are stepping up and who are saying enough, and they're ready to jump in themselves.
Yeah, what you just said is exactly why Republicans are always reacting. They're not proactive. You see the rare example, like a Governor DeSantis in Florida. He's proactive. He's constantly hammering it. He knows the public's on his side with transgender sports, for instance. So what does he do? He goes out and he protects those girls before they even bring that fight to him. Social media, he's not going to wait to be banned before he takes it to them. I think you nailed it. They think, the DC Republican class, they think that they'll be able to build or generate some kind of goodwill by being complacent and by being, affable. Let's use old Wyatt Earp's word. For me, that's just not how it works. That's why they're constantly always marching forward. But I got to ask you about Afghanistan coming up on the hour. This is a big difference in this party now. 20 years ago, and after 9/11, the Republican was I would say that generally both parties signed on to the wars after 9/11. I think that's just true. But Republicans definitely held the war drum longer than Democrats did. I think that's fair to say. Now the complete opposite is true. So that military industrial complex, whatever you want to call it, a deep state, administrative state, didn't find a home in the Republican Party under Donald Trump. So they merged with the neoliberals, And you can see them after Afghanistan, Patrick, trying to get back into the Republican Party now because, Joe Biden left Afghanistan. It was a debacle. But it is going to lead to more voices like Lindsey Graham and others who are going to try to push the party back into a war footing party. If you gave him his say, he'd put troops back in Afghanistan tomorrow, and not just to evacuate people. He would put them back in there for good. That's just his philosophy. Where do you come down on this? We just polled Afghanistan. People didn't like how the withdrawal was done, but generally they still wanted to withdraw from Afghanistan. So they basically were in, the majority is in complete agreement with the former president's position on this. Where do you come down on this?
Yeah, so I spoke with my brother extensively about this. He's an F-16, now F-35 pilot, but flew F-16s over there in Afghanistan. It's been a year over at Bagram Air Force Base, and I sought his opinion on the situation over there. And we both were in complete agreement. There was no longer any purpose for us to be in Afghanistan. I 100% support the withdrawal. The execution of the withdrawal is the issue. I don't think that's any reason or justification to now go back in. But it's quite obvious. We've been lied to for the past 15 years by our military leadership, by our political leaders who said things are in great shape, or, hey, they might not be in great shape, but just give us 6 more months, give us another year, give us another 5 years. It was obvious the second we left that when that government collapsed, that would have happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and it would have happened 20 years from now. The question is whether or not you were prepared to basically prop up a puppet government in Afghanistan in perpetuity. Yeah. And if the answer is no, which in my mind, the answer has to be no, that is not the U.S. government's duty. That is not the taxpayers' duty. I believe it was $300 million or $300 billion. Something insane every day that we spent on average to continue our operations there. I support the withdrawal. I'm grateful that our troops are coming home. I think the disaster of the withdrawal, that blood is on Joe Biden's hands, and leaving Americans behind enemy lines is absolutely an impeachable offense. And the fact that, again, we go back to Republicans in the House, the fact that they are not demanding that impeachment articles be brought forward, or that, others are not signing on to, I believe Marjorie Taylor Greene has brought forward those articles, is ridiculous. It just goes to show we keep the gloves on our side. We don't actually want to fight. They're interested in preserving the status quo, the Mitch McConnells, the Kevin McCarthy's of the world. But in my mind, that is absolutely an impeachable offense. And then add to that the phone call that Joe Biden made. I remember the president that I served under getting impeached for a phone call asking a world leader to investigate corruption by one of our highest elected officials. On Joe Biden's end, he was trying to basically get
facilitate corruption.
It's absolutely absurd. But Mitch McConnell goes out there and said impeachment's not going to go forward. Like it's critical that he nips that in the bud. We need people that understand that administering justice or playing politics, unequally or not really interested in the fight. That time is over. We need new leadership, top to bottom, in our party.
Yeah, I think without a doubt, if this was if the roles were reversed and your former boss did this, he'd be gone. Half the cabinet would have been facing impeachment articles. And Greene got some support over the impeachment article she introduced for Blinken, who was just grossly incompetent. But I mean, the general himself now. I mean, the Secretary of Defense, Joe. There was one warning shot from Eli Lake at Bloomberg when he nominated Lloyd Austin, and that was, this is the same. So now the president, when he was the vice president and they were withdrawing from Iraq, it was literally him and Austin as a pair who failed to secure the status of forces agreement, the provision. Americans can't face Iraqi justice. It's very common provision, but those two together were the team who failed to secure that provision, and which led to chaotic withdrawal and obviously the rise of ISIS without a presence there. And it's just incredible. There was one warning shot, from Eli Lake saying maybe this is not a good. You don't pick people because of that. What happened in Iraq, you would. It's in spite of. And if this was, again, if the roles were reversed, they'd all be facing some kind of accountability. But that's just not going to happen at this point, or at least not with, like you said, not with current leadership. It's not, Patrick.
The fact that we do not have resignations tendered from our national security advisor, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Secretary of Defense from top to bottom, and even Joe Biden's resignation shows that this group in power is not serious, and they are absolutely not held accountable by the media. It is absolutely, they would be out for blood with Donald Trump, and they would be calling for people's heads. And folks on our side, we're just, we're ready to roll over and just move on to the next crisis that Democrats create.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of and just let me say, I mean, I don't like the intelligence community leaking to hurt any president. I don't like how that's done. I don't approve of Joe Biden withdrawing from Afghanistan. So let me leak a transcript showing he's corrupt, or asking Ghani to lie, which is what he was doing. I will help you militarily if you lie about the situation in Afghanistan, just so people who are watching understand what that transcript said. What Joe Biden then went to the camera to say when he blamed Ghani for basically fleeing. He said Ghani fled, and he was wrong about the soldiers fighting. Ghani told him exactly what was going to happen. He lied to the country. That alone, Patrick, the fact that he went after that phone call to the microphone and told America, blamed, your former boss, blamed the former Afghani president, when now we know what was in that transcript. None of that is true. And we just have some of this, I think, is just good old fashioned lying, really just dirty lying. But then also you have to wonder when you hear the president make comments like he made the other day. I mean, he's having imaginary conversations with rabbis he never met, at synagogues he never visited, and recounting stories of how he started off his career in a civil rights movement that he never participated in. I mean, this is borderline. I mean, do you ever think we're in real trouble here? I mean, hyperbole aside. I mean, when the president is basically spouting delusions in front of the media, and as you said, they don't hold him accountable, forget about the mistakes. This guy is talking about things that aren't real. I mean, this is. I hear talk like that, I get real worried. I don't care what party they're in.
Yeah, I agree. Having served in the administration, you get to see the deep state, the administrative state firsthand. It really runs itself to a large extent.
Yeah.
I would say the one silver lining in the decline and complete failure of leadership of Joe Biden is you do realize that leadership at the top still matters. When President Trump was president, he was in charge. You knew exactly who was driving the ship. Now, the deep state fought him at every turn. Bureaucrats fought him at every turn. Many Republican appointees in the government who were more, Mitt Romney Republicans that just wanted to get a career boost by going to work in the executive branch, they also fought him, Miles Taylor and Anonymous over at DHS. But President Trump was ultimately steering the ship. Joe Biden, it's like a ghost ship right now. I don't know who's running the country, whether it's Ron Klain, Kamala, or just some class of bureaucrats or political appointees. But it is very frightening, and you realize that these failures of leadership have real consequences. There are over a dozen dead Americans because of that failure of leadership. And I believe it's critically important, again, that we elect leaders. I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to change the world, but you need to start by electing congressmen and women, by electing senators who understand the fight that we're in and are willing to take it to the Democrats and call out, Joe Biden when he needs to be accountable for this. The fact that there is not I don't know the exact date of the withdrawal that you want to put your finger on, but there's not an equivalent of a January 6th commission already stood up to look into what happened in Afghanistan, not just during the withdrawal, but over the past 15 plus years, so that it never happens again, because we cannot continue to accept the lies told to us by the administrative state and by Democrat politicians, because they ultimately are life or death lies.
Yeah, and so I can assume that you would be you'd be an ally of Joe Kent's if he were to be elected as well. Because him and others who are running are calling for like you. I mean, I can't imagine in all the years I've been in politics. I can't imagine where something this severe of this kind of a situation would happen and there not be a commission put together by the Congress. I don't even know what they're doing, wasting their time with January 6th at this point. We have more than a dozen, like you said, more than a dozen Americans who are dead that did not have to die. Billions, $85 billion worth of military equipment left behind. I mean, this was something that could keep a congressional hearing busy for 6 months, at least to a year. I just can't even imagine a time period where that wouldn't happen, Patrick. I just can't. But we're living in it now, so I guess we'd be able to count you in on some kind of an effort like that. Because it's not just Biden. It's 15, 20 years worth of lies, like you said. Really is.
Exactly. No, 100%. I would support that effort. And I think it's important, if we take back just the House in 2022, some people might say, what's the point? We're not going to be able to get any legislation passed by the Senate and by the White House. Those House committees have subpoena power, and they can absolutely do the investigations necessary to look into what happened in Afghanistan, and then also what happened during the 2020 election. I support active investigations and Congress using its true oversight power in the way that it should right now.
Yeah, which also goes to your earlier point, which is really does matter who you elect, folks. The letter after the name is not as important as whether he or she is really willing to do what's necessary. Because look at how much resistance Donald Trump ran into after Republicans lost the House in 2018. The only difference was that Paul Ryan was not willing to give Jim Jordan, you mentioned before, and others real subpoena power. Go nuts, Devin. Go nuts. Nancy Pelosi was, and she turned Adam Schiff loose. And they do have teeth, but you have to have a speaker and you have to have leaders who are willing to let their chairmen and chairwomen do their jobs. And Republicans, they just haven't done that at this point. Yeah, Patrick, I got to tell you, I mean, it takes money to win elections. You've done well on that end. It's definitely viable. Tell people where they can find you, learn more about what you're doing, and we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on today. As you mentioned, I'm running against the establishment. I'm not going to get the big dollar checks from some of these, PACs and other established players. So I need, grassroots folks to come in. We've done a great job of attracting a ton of people into this fight with us. They can go to PatrickWitt.com to learn more about us. Please, look at what we stand for. Look at my background. I'm a man of action. I get things done. I'm not going up there for fancy dinner parties. That's not what this is about. I'm going up there to fight, and I'm asking for people to come alongside me and join me in this. So again, PatrickWitt.com. And you can also follow me on social media, Patrick J. Witt on Twitter and Patrick Witt for Congress on Facebook.
Yeah, like I said, Patrick, I'd love to have you back. And just the last note on that, I think really what it boils down to, because you have done a really good job, grassroots fundraising. If you defend people, they'll want to help. They'll want to follow you. They'll want to support you. And I really think that's really what it comes down to. If you don't, then you have to go to those PACs. You have to go. There's only two directions in this business. That's it.
Yeah. I'm not controlled by anyone in this race. And, being a first-time candidate, you realize these established players, the big money sources, it's real. It's no surprise to me, having been in this just for a few months, why we continue to elect a bunch of spineless folks is because they're bought and paid for. And it is the harder path to go on the grassroots side, but it's ultimately the path that yields results because you stand apart from them and they can't come to you and say, hey, we're not going to support your election next cycle. You can say, I don't care. Do whatever you want. I am standing my ground. This is what I believe in, and you can't buy me. You need people like that in Congress.
We have, I know from last prior shows as well, we have viewers in the 10th, and you gave them a lot to think about here today, Patrick. You did. Again, all the best. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Rich. I appreciate it. Best of luck.
All the best. That was Patrick Witt, folks, 10th Congressional District in Georgia. Crowd rates, I got to just tell you, I 100% can vouch. There were a few people who made some phone calls after the election and few people who fought. And he was one of them. That's it. So when I tell you, I can count them all on one hand. That's it. From and not Georgia, from everywhere. I literally can. All right, and he's definitely one of them. That was good. That was a good interview. I'm glad we were able to get him on today. Yeah, I'm way over the break time here. It's 12:14. When we come back, we'll take a look at some other polls. We'll go through some of the other results. I have some stuff on abortion I want to show you as well. I'll give you the pro-life, pro-choice designations, and if you're on locals, you can see it yourself. But we're going to look specifically at what the spreads are when you ask people about these issues. And I really think, too, Gallup does a good job of this, but there are some others that play little word games, like we see word games played with vaccine mandates. If you support an employer handing down a mandate, you want to sound reasonable. Do you think employers should, be able to, tell all their employees they need to be vaccinated to protect everybody? Well, of course you're going to get a certain answer. Most Americans would say, you know what, I'm fair-minded and I want to play along with that game. That's why passports is so close. And even we had passports pro by, single digits. But when you drill down, well, do you think students should be kicked out of graduate programs if they don't take the jab? Do you think employers should be able to fire their employees? Do you think children should be kept home if a teacher doesn't take a jab? Then you get very different answers because that's real world. And it shows how complicated these issues are. Been polling abortion for years, and abortion is very much one of these issues. All right, so let me take a real quick break. When we come back, we'll go over abortion. We're not even going to take the whole bad habit break. All right, we'll be back in about a minute. All right, stay tuned.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
All right, we're back. Inside the Numbers. Follow me on Getter at People's Pundit. Follow me on Twitter at Peoples_Pundit. And of course, sign up to Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com if you want to be able to get access to the information we're about to go over first. And you want to be involved in the questionnaires and also a bunch of other good stuff. Live streams that other people don't get, like the one I'm going to do either later today or tomorrow, that digs a lot more into it. I have a lot of graphs I want to create. And by the way, Locals, the reason landing pages aren't up yet on Big Data Poll is because I want some of them just to be for you. Not exactly sure how to do that yet, unless we just keep PPD for that sole purpose, where I can put up those landing pages and only you can see them on PPD because it's got a paywall and I can give you guys like a Locals code. And I think that may be the best way to do it. All right. But for all of this tracking that we do, vaccination status, now we have boosters. We're going to be tracking that. And I do want to show you something. Let's see. Real quick before we get to abortion. This stunned me. Okay? And I'm taking, I don't want to say too much out. And if we don't have an audio-only version of the show, so I could just basically let you guys look at that. All right? And that's not the one I'm talking about. Let me kill the 2020 vote preference. Sorry about that. But there you go. That reminds you again why Joe Biden would absolutely lose the election if it was held today against Donald Trump. Trump he'd obliterate him. All right, and I think that's goes to the election integrity stuff we were talking about with Patrick before. There comes a point where I'm not sure you'd be able to rely on, changing rules mid-game because it's just so much. But then again, you never know. All right, but anyway, here we go. I put this up by race. I'm not going to say anything. I think you're smart enough to look at it and see for yourself. But I think that's stunning to me. We also found, if you have access to the crosstabs, the interactive crosstabs, look at gender as well. All right, and then also look at parental status. Why does that matter? Because if you have kids, then you did what, right? And I think this is a conversation we need to have on locals more thoroughly, and we're going to have that conversation. But there's some statistically significant stuff here, folks. Statistically significant. And nobody else did this. As far as I know, we're the first one to do this outside of some authority, outside of what we see being reported in the I'm not going to use the words. And I was stunned by this. Waiting didn't really affect the raw to what is now processed results, because region, education, there just didn't seem to be the things that you can wait for, even if you believe in waiting for party ID, which we don't. That won't even change that. These were race-based, gender-based. These are different kinds of demographics. Region didn't matter. I think that's notable. And for all the reasons we'll talk about more on locals, because I'm already really being, funny with that already on YouTube. All right. Let's first look at the overall designation. If you are not looking at the crosstab, I will tell you right now. Just like good old Gallup, a little bit different how we word the question, but generally the same. Regarding the abortion issue, would you consider yourself to be pro-life or pro-choice? 43% pro-choice, 42% pro-life, 15% have either no opinion or are undecided. Females are more pro-choice in this poll, which was a little bit different than some of the other experiences that we've had. But as a way to underscore, they tend to not like the specifics more than men. And by specifics, I mean the charts that we're bringing up now. All right. Real quick, though, by ideology, just to give you some cool little, bullet points here. 65% of conservatives are pro-life. 71% of liberals are pro-choice. 49, I'm rounding, percent of moderates are pro-choice. Okay. By party detail. And let's separate the independents. Just to give you why it's so split when it comes to independents. Democrats, 66% are pro-choice, 67% of Republicans are pro-life, 44% of independents are pro-choice, but third-party voters are +3 pro-life. When you combine independents and independent third-party voters, it's basically even. It's 41 pro-choice, 39 pro-life, with a large chunk of undecided or I just have no opinion. You may notice, if you've been following our polling for a while, everyone's polling will show this. If it doesn't, there's something seriously wrong with it. Independents, third parties, nonpartisans in general tend to have a lot more undecideds. That shouldn't surprise you at all. All right. By education, if you, generally if you have any kind of college training at all, from an associate up, then you are more likely to be pro-choice, even though undergrads are damn near split, right? Some associates are +5 pro-choice. If you have a high school education or less, you are pro-life by 6 points, which I find to be incredibly interesting. All right. Again, income has some pretty cool stuff there as well. But for the most part, if you're a worker, you're much more likely to be pro-life. If you are rich, or not rich, because some people can make 200K or more and not be rich. Depends where they live. 200K or more are most likely to be pro-choice, whereas other groups are either very tight, or once you get to the 50 to 100,000 category, it starts to lean towards pro-life. All right, pretty interesting right there stuff. I know. Parental status. If you have children that are 18 years or older, you are overwhelmingly pro-life. If you have school-age children, you're split. If you have children who are under 18 but not yet school-aged, you are pro-life by several points. I thought that was interesting because you have the older group, which is the most pro-life. Older meaning they are parents, but their children are older. They are the most pro-life. But you can see younger people who have kids much more pro-life than was the case 20 years ago, when the pro-choice designation had a pretty big lead. All throughout the 90s and moving into the 2000s, pro-choice dominated, even though Americans were generally still split pretty well on the specifics of issues, like we're showing you right now. The lead for pro-choice comes almost exclusively from people who don't have kids. What a shock. And I mean exclusively. It's 49 pro-choice, 33 pro-life if you do not have children. All right, that I guess shouldn't really shock a whole lot of people, but it's telling. If you're single, you're 20 points plus pro-choice. If you're separated, you're a few points pro-life. If you're divorced, you're 10 points pro-choice. If you're widowed, you're 5 points pro-life. If you're married, you're 11 points pro-life. I mean, I'm not going to say anything to denigrate anybody. I'm simply saying that it's very clear that the pro-choice movement has lost steam because of developments we've seen over the years, but also very much remains dependent on the, how can I say this? They like when the nuclear family is weak. All right? Well, not that they like it. It benefits pro-choice and the abortion industry in general when the family unit is weak. So you take that for what you will. All right? If you're evangelical, you're 70 points pro-life. If you're not, you're 20 points pro-choice. By religion, very interesting here. Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, these are so-called Catholics. The Catholic Church is not in favor of abortion. Well, guess what? Neither are Catholics in the United States of America. They are pro-life by about 4 points, 44-40. The biggest religious group that supports abortion is the Jewish religion. And people ask me all the time, it really surprised me, and I got that on Locals. American Jews are liberal. And they're concentrated in metro areas, and it really shouldn't surprise you all that much. Protestants are the most pro-life group by 20 points. All right, so you have Catholics and Protestants who are pro-life. You have Jews and, ironically, Muslims, although there's a huge number of undecided Muslims. So I don't know. I take that with a grain. But either way, you have no religion being the most pro-choice, followed by Jewish. Another religion, which is like Hindu, right? All the other religions not cited here, are actually pretty damn even. 41-38 or 42-38. That's pretty even. It's pretty close. It's a 2.1 sampling error for crying out loud. So the only one that was really statistically significant that stood out, that should blow your mind, is the Jewish religious affiliation, but it shouldn't surprise you if you know, that generally American Jews are not dominated by Orthodox Jews. Right? These are liberal metro Jews. All right? And they may not even, there's a huge group, the biggest one. They wouldn't even say they're practicing. They're not devout. They're a liberal group. All right? All right, so with that in mind, I think I got everything here, basically. I mean, we could talk about area real quick. Urban America is only 6 points pro-choice. That is very different than the way it used to be. Suburban America is, almost identical. It's rural America, obviously, that is significantly pro-life. Here, just give that to me. You distracted me pretty badly. Okay, just I bring it to her, I guess. And then what else? Let's see. That's area. Let's go by region real quick, and then we'll move on. All right, the Northeast. No stunner there. It's the most liberal area of the country to include out west. Even though we think of liberal, we think of California, Hawaii. The Northeast is definitely the most liberal, and it is 50-32 pro-choice. The Midwest is damn near even. Pro-life has a slight edge in the Midwest. The South is pro-life, and the West is 3 points pro-choice. So why did I do that? Because when you look at this issue and you listen to the media, they act like 70% of the country is pro-choice or something. They act like anybody in Texas is the devil and backward and wants to force people back to the alleys of the times when abortion was totally illegal. That's crazy. Over the years, the abortion industry has lost significant ground with the American public. And if you are pro-life, you should start acting like it. Generationally, still, the older you are, the more likely you be to pro-life. But the numbers of that support pro-choice, that call themselves pro-choice among younger people, has dwindled, evaporated. The generational shift will continue because younger people now are less pro-choice than they were 20, 30 years ago. They'll become even more pro-life as they get older. That's the pattern. I just read to you all the demographics. They're going to get married. They're going to have children. And the science will continue to develop because the science has hurt the abortion industry badly. You don't believe me? Do you support or oppose abortion during or being legal during each of the following stages of pregnancy? After a heartbeat has been detected, this is the Texas bill, 32.1% nationally, not in Texas, nationally, support abortion being illegal after there's a heartbeat. We specifically didn't give them a time frame because we don't want to play the games of the media. Well, it's the first trimester. It's a fetus. It has a heartbeat. Once a fetus has a heartbeat, do you support the legalized killing of that fetus? Do you support it being legal to stamp out that little heartbeat? It's that simple. And the answer is no. 47% oppose, 32% support, 21% are unsure because there are a lot of people who did understand we were talking about very early in the pregnancy here. And they don't like the idea of terminating a fetus when it has already has developed a heartbeat. But they do realize it's the first trimester, and they've been inundated with this 30, 40-year narrative, whether you agree with it or not. Look, I know where they come from because I was raised during this era. They wanted you to think of it as a fetus, not a baby. And it wasn't really that big of a deal. That's what you were told if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s. That's what you were told by the public school system. After doctors determine a baby can feel pain. We also did this because of the 20-week mark, the Patient Pain Protection Act or something. Republicans caved on that like a bunch of cowards too. 54% oppose terminating a pregnancy after the baby can feel pain. 24% support it. That's what cowardly Republicans ran away from. They won't even touch final trimester in the Congress. They're too cowardly to do that. 67% of American voters oppose abortion in the third final trimester, the final 3 months of the pregnancy. 17% support it. You understand what I'm saying to you? 17% agreed with Hillary Clinton when Donald Trump looked over at her and said, Hillary, you'd rip a baby out in the 9 month. And she would. Because that's absolutely the case. And then we asked any time during the pregnancy just to try to iron that out a little bit. And 21% supported that, 49% opposed it. So we have all these people suing. We have a very unpopular president who's declining by the day, instructing his Department of Justice to go after, with the law, man, the power of the feds, to go after anybody who follows the state law in Texas. Even though Supreme Court, they didn't rule in the merits, but they did stand back and say, you know what, I'm not blocking this. These are the numbers they feel so emboldened to act like this being behind them. And Republicans feel so cowardly. And I'm talking about national Republicans. This should have been, honestly, this could have been done already. This wouldn't even be an issue right now if Paul Ryan had stones. But he didn't. Neither did Mitch McConnell. And they were afraid of it. So was John Boehner, by the way. But Republicans had complete control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. Would have 100% had the American people behind them if they would have done at least a moderate bill. You're telling me with more than 2/3 supermajority, you can't introduce legislation and get it to Donald Trump's desk prohibiting abortion in the final 3 months? It doesn't matter if you're a man, you're a woman. As a matter of fact, let's look at some of the crosstabs on this. On the heartbeat bill itself, let's start there. All right. On the heartbeat bill, the Northeast we were just talking about was the most pro-choice region of the country, and yet they still, by 2 points, support the heartbeat bill. 2 points. Obviously, the Midwest is going to be more. That's 20 points. So is the South. And the West is about 17 points. And I'm rounding up in my head. 17.8, so 18 points. 3 out of 4 regions, significant margins. 1 region where it's close. And Joe Biden thinks he somehow has a mandate to sick wannabe Supreme Court Justice Merrick Garland. I mean, on Texas. Folks, it's crazy. But the media and the entertainment industry for years have done a really good job obfuscating this issue for Democrats. But that hold that they've had, the stranglehold they've had on this issue is done. But Republicans, it's like ingrained in their DNA to run away from the abortion issue. Be afraid, be afraid. It's ridiculous. It's nuts. By gender, women and men are almost identical. It's 2 point more with women are 2 points more with the heartbeat to support, and men are 2 points more to oppose. All right, you go down the list during the final 3 months of the pregnancy. Men support that more than women. So it's always like this, we're going to chase away the suburban female voter, the female moderate. She doesn't need you to defend her. She opposes that 68.4%. The American woman. Men are more supportive of aborting a pregnancy in the final 3 months. I've told you this before, this is a weird phenomenon. It's like liberal men are more abortion activists than women are. You have liberal men, and then you have some men who, look, I'm a guy, I could say whatever the hell I want about a guy. You're a deadbeat, and you'd be dying to, anything to alleviate that responsibility, right? Anyway, sorry, some of these issues bother me. If you're a dad, you know this shouldn't really be a factor at all. I shouldn't even be measuring these high numbers among some of you men. Shame on you. That's absolutely a baby. And I don't think you would even dispute it yourself if you had to witness the act. After doctors determine a baby can feel pain, again, men are more supportive of aborting babies after 20 weeks than women. The difference is about 2 points in support, and the difference with is about 4 points. So about 6 point disparity when you take into account both sides. It's crazy, man. It's just it's crazy to me. It's just crazy. All right, I told some of you go to the. Oh, let's see if Laura did it. As sick as she is, I bet you she did it. Let me check. Yeah, we'll leave. That was some great stuff with Patrick, and we'll leave some of those. We will leave some of those questions about election integrity up for locals discussion. Okay. All right. Yeah, you guys heard Bannon talking about Laura being. Look, I crunched the numbers. But Laura makes the wheels turn. So Steve is right about that 100%. Although Laura is like in training right now. She, like, God forbid something was to happen to me. She wants to like be that good at it. And in truth, as you guys know, there's a good part of polling that's an art. And no matter how much I tell people some of the technical side, to give them technical pointers, they're never going to be as good. And I'm not doing that to pat myself on the back, but there are just some other pollsters out there who will forever be bad pollsters. Quinnipiac will never really be a good pollster again. I think probably the New York Times, if they want to get a better polling outfit, they should probably get somebody different than Nate Cohen. And I'm not saying that as a dig on him. These are people who are stuck in the academic and media cubicles. They will only be right like a broken watch is right twice a day, like a broken clock is right twice a day. The American electorate swings. They will forever favor one party because their bias is so bad. Their view of America is so incorrect that they will never be able to objectively look at the American electorate and see which way it truly is moving. They'll just be right when the team they favor wins, which is an inevitability in American politics. The pendulum is forever swinging in American electoral politics. And unless you are widely versed on American geography and culture, and you've traveled and you speak to people like I have spoken, look, that's one of the main reasons why I heard the Trump voter in 2016 when nobody else did is because of how I was raised, where I came from, the places I visited. I don't think New York City, a cubicle at the New York Times in New York City represents America. It doesn't. Academic life in Connecticut does not represent the American electorate. And if you can't understand the subject of your research, you will never be able to predict their behavior. It really is that simple. So when I heard a liberal woman in Michigan who voted for Bernie Sanders tell me that she's not going to vote for Hillary Clinton or any other corporate Democrat for that matter because her husband lost his job, or her husband's business which was like, maybe, I don't know, HVAC, for instance. He was put out because you could just go pick up a bunch of people cheaper at the 7-Eleven and pay them off under the table $6 an hour. So I know what she's talking about. Unlike those people in the media who don't live amongst the rest of us, I know that's real. So I believed her. When all of the voters who in southeastern Ohio, all the way up to across the damn state to Trumbull County, were saying, I voted for Barack Obama, but I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because, you know what, he's right about these damn trade deals. I believed him. I didn't force my assumptions onto them. I just listened. And if you know their plight is, and here's the difference. I know their plight. I know their grievances are real and legitimate. They don't believe that. You know, the changes that we have seen in this country that hurt a certain group of people, they never experience the impacts from those changes. They don't really think they're legitimate grievances. So when they hear somebody say it, they think they're just kind of like lying. You know? So scratch that response, or weight this group down, or this can't be representative. You know, that's not scientific. That's just anecdotal. Get rid of that one too. I mean, that's what happened. That and their methodology sucks. But you really can't even begin to address, you know, methodology problems, really, in general, if you don't address your own biases, you know, and cognitive or confirmation, whatever they may be, right? All right, so with that in mind, it's 12:45. I'm going to go crunch a little bit more, all right? I didn't hit the damn live chat, and I saved the last 15 minutes for this, but that's all right. We'll crunch some more. We'll throw them up on locals. You'll see it, obviously. There's so much more I want to criss and cross here. We didn't even get to the registered voter economic confidence index. I don't want to speak too soon because if it turns out not being right, I think it may have improved a little bit this month, but still, it did not recuperate from the last month of Trump. So, I mean, again, I can't imagine it recuperated. I mean, just last month was really bad, but I can't imagine it was going to recuperate all that much, or I can't expect it to, you know, recuperate all that much when, you know, like I was talking about with John Frederick's on Outside the Beltway yesterday. I mean, 500,000 job miss. It's anemic. They hear the news. And then we ask them, what, 4 days later, how they view the current job market. So I wasn't expecting a huge rebound, but because last month was such a tumble, I was expecting at least some kind of reversion. But whatever, we'll crunch it, we'll figure it out. But I really want to get on a locals live stream. I want to get this done so I can get on a locals live stream, and we can talk more too about that graph that I showed you that we didn't really discuss all that much, because again, I think we're the only ones to do this as far as I know, and I'm really concerned. If you thought I was concerned when I had some people coming up to me questioning the reporting system, if you thought I was concerned then, I did not expect the numbers that we found. I thought they would be really infinitesimal. And the age difference, age, race, and gender, that is not good, folks. That is not good. All right, real quick, a few more before we go here. We'll tell the Kamala Harris is slightly below Biden even. She's about 50% unfavorable, 37% very unfavorable, just under 50. And only 43.7 have a favorable opinion of her. Only 20.7 have a very favorable opinion of her. On the generic ballot, like I said, interesting. Republicans lead Democrats 42-41, which means Donald Trump is running about 3 points stronger than Republican candidates for Congress. So remember that the next time Mitch McConnell, if you're a Republican, screws you, okay? Or tells you that you need to run away from Donald Trump to win an election. Because Donald Trump not only is running stronger in the head-to-head, but he's actually... Look, I mean, Republicans are at 42. Donald Trump is over 44. So in just vote share, he's 2 points plus ahead of them. But then the spread, he's 3 points ahead of them. All right, so they should probably shut up and listen to what his movement is saying. But they won't. Preference for control of Congress. Very similar spread that we see in the generic ballot. But those undecideds and someone else's shrink. That's why we do this. It basically, if an election is close, we ask this question. We can look and we can see, well, what about the undecideds? Who do they prefer to have control of Congress? And in fact, I'll do that right now. I'll show you right now. On the generic ballot, let's cross them. See, this is something I'm trying to show you in a graph. It's perfect. Where are you? Where'd you go? That's generic vote preference. What on earth did I do here? Oh, I put generic ballot right in the same row instead of column. Okay, there it is. Looking at it, doing the spinning wheel of death. A lot of you guys are probably on it, right? It takes a little bit of time to load up when that happens, so apologize for that, but there we go. Okay, it's coming. Among the undecideds, who do you prefer to have control of Congress? And you can see there clearly, and I'll leave this in here so you guys can go and check it out if you're on it. I'll take generic ballot out too, just obviously it's going to be 0 to 0. But I just did that and rescheduled it. Let me find it again. Come on, ballot. Where'd you go? Right before president. Come on. Okay. So in the generic ballot, you can see the undecideds are generally split. And 60% truly are undecided, meaning we know it. For all those people who say they're undecided, 6 out of 10 really don't know who they want to control. Those who do know, very much split today. Maybe that will change and we'll have to keep to see whether or not they start to lean in any strong direction. Republicans, you are losing a little bit more to someone else as far as control. So what does that tell me? They're not going to vote for somebody else. So when we ask people on the generic ballot, if the elections for the U.S. House of Representatives were held today, for which party candidate would you vote in the congressional district? There are over 4% of people who told us they want Republicans to control Congress saying somebody else. So that is an indication to us that we are understating Republican support on the generic ballot. And as we get closer to the election, we're going to see it. Because they're not going to continue to say somebody else. They're going to realize it's a binary choice, if they have viable candidates anyway. That's important to remember. And that's why picking the right primary person is very important. All right, but that will consolidate. And we saw that, I've seen that 6-7 years now. That's what happens. Democrats only lose about 2%. Right? So for people who say they're undecided, or they're choosing someone else, but they want Democrats to control Congress, that's only 2%. Right? So Democrats are losing more of their own to Republicans than Republicans are losing to Democrats. This really looks like the beginning of 2014 to me. Not 2010, the beginning of 2014. That's what it reminds me of. All right? Just to give you guys a knee-jerk reaction. All right, if you voted, get this, on the 2020 vote preference, all right, actually, forget about it. Let's look at let's show you both. I have time. If you wanted the Republican Party to control Congress, 10% still went to Joe Biden. If you wanted the Democratic Party to control Congress, only 4% went to Donald Trump. Now, 6% is going to Donald Trump of people who want Democrats to control Congress, while only 5% is going to Joe Biden. If you want Republicans to control Congress, 85% is going to Donald Trump. If you want Democrats to control Congress, only 79% is going to Joe Biden. Get it? I said it on War Room today. Do the numbers. It's a 6 million vote swing just from one candidate to the other. And then you have all of those other voters who will move to somebody else, third party. It's bad. It really is a scenario, and you guys know how I feel about the popular vote and Republicans' chances and abilities to win the popular vote nationally in a presidential election. You know how I feel about that. It's not good. And it won't be for the foreseeable future until coalition shifting really is dramatic. Much more dramatic than what we've seen. And yet, I'm telling you right here, right now, that Donald Trump would win the popular vote. Because Joe Biden, as long as they're, and Democrats would do, they do what they do best, which is try to keep people off ballots. So they'd go after the Libertarian, they'd go after the Green Party, they'd go after anybody they can to keep them off the ballot, because they know they're more likely to lose those votes. But we've seen them do that in the past, and it screws them anyway. Because those people just decide, I'm not going to vote. All right? So that is not what happened last time. They did do their damnedest to keep people off the ballot, and that did work. But that's not what, that's not the totality of the picture. Joe Biden got some of those voters that went to Ron, what's his name? Ron, whatever his name is. I'm forgetting his name. Johnson. And Jill Stein. And down the line. All right, so with that, I'm going to kick rocks. I'm going to get out of here. We're going to do the charts and put more up. What else can I say? I think I got all my show announcements. So, Joe Kent, Friday. Don't miss that interview. I'm very glad. So, thanks to Patrick Witt, our guest. I was glad to get him on today. That was a great interview. I see some of your reactions too. I'm really glad you liked it. And you got a lot out of it. Very articulate guy. I'll tell you this right now. Very articulate guy. And also, let me reiterate, and it's a crowded field. Take a look at it. I'm not saying one or the other. I'm saying that there are, the number of people that were really up for that fight, I can count on my hand, and Patrick was one of them. And nobody can take that away from the guy. I'm telling you. All right? He's the real deal. And you should ask for a second opinion on that. And you can ask Robert, who also will give you his background. Maybe we'll talk about that too on What Are the Odds on Monday. Maybe Robert and I will give you guys a brief backstory, which would be pretty cool. Nice insight. Instead of inside the numbers, it'll be like inside the story or something. All right? And then, Joe Kent on Friday will come back and talk to us. We'll have Don on, of course. All right? But for today, thanks to the guest, Patrick Witt, Georgia 10 Congressional District. And I like to have these interviews. I do. I think that the biggest story of 2022 is going to be what Patrick and I spoke about today, and what, by the way, Mike Collins and I spoke about, and what Joe Kent and I spoke about, and what David Giglio and I spoke about. The party is in an identity crisis. And it really comes down to those who want to be proactive and those who want to continue to go along and be reactive. And I'm not sure Republicans can ever expect anything different from their party if they don't let this fight play out and one side doesn't come out and prevail. Because I'm telling you, as it stands right now, Joe Biden could kill a dozen more people. They would never impeach the guy. They are not the same caliber of fighter that Democrats have on their side. So it's inevitable. The mid to long-term prospects for the Republican Party, it's inevitable. It's just not even the party. Their way of life of the voter who supports the Republican Party. It is not good. Because they just don't have anybody ensuring its protection. All right. And with that in mind, I'm out. I'm leaving a nice 2 minutes for Bad Habit. And as always, it's been a while. I haven't said it. Special thanks to the Bowen Band. Great theme song. See you guys soon.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, to give in to the need and leave it all behind. Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Yeah.